Let's try this again. This is actually the third take of trying to do this video. It's gonna be one of those that deals with emotions and depression, but also it's something I haven't talked about publicly, I don't think ever. And amongst my close friends, like very few know like the whole story about what I'm gonna be talking about today, but it basically has something to do with this mask. Fucking mask. So, the past couple of days, I've been feeling progressively depressed. And I didn't quite understand it because I wasn't sure what kicked it off. And, I've just been trying to keep it at bay and carry on with whatever it is that I need to do. But today it hit from the moment I woke up, and it was getting to a point where I was like, okay, I need to figure out what the fuck this is because I have work to do. I've got an edit that's due tomorrow, basically. And I was starting to work this morning, and I could feel how much I was holding back, and something was just bugging the fuck out of me and making me feel this way. And at first I thought it was, when it comes to depression, sometimes you just wake up and you feel shit. That's the thing though, as the day went on, it didn't feel like that was it. So I started thinking about it and tried to figure out what it was. And I came to this conclusion based on what I've been doing the past week and been thinking about in the past few weeks. So at the beginning of this vlog series, I mentioned that I wanted to get back into music again. Writing and recording and just playing music. Because it was something that I put on the back burner for quite a while. And especially in the past 2 weeks, I've been setting things up to get that in motion. Sure, there was that one song, that cover of Monty Python's Always Look on the Bright Side of Life in the second episode. And I put up all my old tracks from my very first demo. But I knew there was something holding me back. And as I was setting everything up so that I could regularly record anytime I wanted. It's more of a workflow thing and equipment and all that stuff. But as I was setting all that stuff up, I could feel this feeling that I've been having for the past couple of days slowly creeping in. And it's been hitting harder and harder. And the more I think about it, the more it has to do with my past. Because, wow, this is so fucking tough to talk about. Oh my God. This is weird. Those of you who know me, those of you who are watching this vlog, those who know my YouTube channel know that I'm very open about a lot of shit. Sure, there's like things that involve other people that I keep private, and stuff between me and my wife that I keep private. Things that, I have no business talking about, I keep private. But everything else has always been fair game, and I've always believed in, being open and honest about shit, even your own faults. My biggest inspiration, Kevin Smith, always used to say like, name it and claim it when it comes to your own faults. But this one it's so tough because it's stuff that I've kept inside for over a decade. And it's all got to do with this fucking mask. Or more like what this mask represents, because this is the mask I wore in the second punk band I was in, Y2K. And the stuff about that band is the stuff that I barely ever talk about publicly. Partially because it's been a long time, also because I've distanced myself from that world and went headstrong into film more. And after my last band, Rolling Sixes, kind of drifted apart, I channeled more of my attention into filmmaking. The odd jam session and gig here or there with Caimano, but apart from that, not much music. Which was the reason why I wanted to get back in it, because it was a muscle that had kind of atrophied. I've always known in the back of my head why I haven't gone so full on with music. And I guess it's just something that I've never really wanted to admit, either to myself or publicly. It all ties back into the experiences from when I was wearing this mask. This is so ridiculously emo without any context for those of you who don't know. That must seem weird to watch, but I'm just trying. I'm trying to talk about this as honestly as I can, even though it's incredibly disjointed. Fuck, where do I begin? So I used to be in a band called Y2K. When I first came back to Malaysia, the band that I started is the band that has the name that I still use to this day, Caimano, which is my YouTube handle, my Twitter handle. It's just my handle. Around the time that I started getting into the underground music scene at that time with that band, you try and find gigs and stuff. And through doing that, I got to know this guy who I ended up starting this band called Y2K. I've never taken much ownership for that band because I always felt like he was the one that started it. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, we started this band, which was originally just supposed to be like something like Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, punk covers of pop songs. And it slowly started developing into a full-on band. Around that time, Caimano kind of had to stop playing for a while because of a falling out between me and my bassist, which has since been resolved. And I have a lot of respect for the guy for being the one to step up and resolve it. So whatever bad blood there was gone. But at the time when I had that falling out with that bassist, it felt like he really betrayed me. And I just didn't want to do Caimano at that time because I felt like it was the three of us, myself, the drummer, and the bassist. To just replace him, just at that time didn't feel right because it left a bad taste in my mouth, which is becoming a recurring theme when it comes to bands. So because of that, I concentrated on Y2K. And I actually started an indie label with that guy in Y2K called FYI Entertainment. Even that is something that I don't take much ownership of. But yeah, we started this label both to release our stuff and to find other stuff as well. It was a really DIY punk label, and we did some cool stuff. We organized a bunch of shows. We released One Buck Short's first EP, and they went on to meteoric success after they left the label. Brought in No Effects to play in Malaysia. That was one of the highlights, And as for being in that band, Y2K, if I'm honest, there were some incredibly great moments. And I think as a musician, I ticked off almost everything that I ever wanted to do as a musician in that band. We released a full-length album with a very cool CD design. The packaging was a pizza box, which was kind of interesting. It was the first album that I recorded myself. Very DIY. We basically did all the tracking in the dude's house. And then I did all the mixing and overdubs and vocals here in this room. My neighbors must have hated us, but we didn't care. We just propped up mattresses on the walls and recorded this album on a very early version of Cakewalk, and the final mix was done in Cool Edit, way back before it was turned into Audition and bought by Adobe. It was incredibly DIY and punk as fuck, but that was the biggest, training tool I had for recording, just releasing an album, which we released all by ourselves. We got radio airplay, managed to get our music video on TV. We entered the Global Battle of the Bands, and in 2007, won the rounds in Malaysia, and I got to fulfill one of my biggest dreams, which was to play in London, where I grew up. And not only just in London, played at the Electric Ballroom in Camden Town, which was amazing. We didn't win, but to me that was fine. We got to play in England, in Camden Town. That was nuts for me. I'd pass by there all the time, and just the thought of that we actually played there is insane. We toured around the country, played Singapore, played Thailand, played a huge music festival in Thailand, the Fat Festival, which is an interesting name for a huge festival, but yeah, it was in airplane hangars. It was huge. Played in Indonesia, in Bandung. Everything that I could ever imagine doing with the band, we did. Played Rock the World. It was an amazing time. Open for No Effects. That's crazy. But at the same time, it was like the bigger we got, the more I could tell something was wrong. Because we'd started the label, and around the same time that I was doing this music, I was also trying to get into filmmaking, and I made my movie, Chipla. And a lot of it was done with the help of this guy. The movie, like, if you watch it, you'll see it starts off with the logo for FYI Films, which was something like I was trying to branch off from the record label to have a film production company as well. And around the time after the movie was released, this partner of mine wanted to invest some money and start a recording studio. And I still remember my thinking at the time, because I had achieved the dream that I'd always imagined, which was to make a movie. And it went far and beyond my expectations. Not only did I make a movie, like it got released in the cinemas and I won an award for it. So in my head, I was like, I've managed to achieve my dream. And now I want to help my friend achieve his. And the thing that you gotta understand is, like, I really felt like I owed this guy because I felt like he was always there for me. He was, the best way I could put it back then was that, you know, he was my brother from another mother. We were pretty much inseparable. We did everything together. Like, he was one of the first friends I made that had no ties to England at all, you know, because most of the friends that I had in Malaysia were people that I already met in England. But he was like one of the first true best friends that I had. Someone that I would honestly call my brother. Someone I would jump in front of traffic for. A lot of that stems from, you know, when I first discovered that, when I was first diagnosed as having depression. And a lot of it had to do with my workplace at the time and stuff that was happening there, which honestly, I don't know if I'll ever talk about in this type of public format. But long story short, it reached a point where I just had to leave. And it wasn't just leave, like I had to disappear. So I disappeared. I literally walked out of the office. I still remember the last thing I did was say goodbye to the receptionist, who was always nice to me. I just left everything and drove away. And the only person I thought I could call was this guy. And I stayed over his place for the night with my phone off and slept the best sleep I ever had up to that point. And then waking up the next day knowing everyone was looking for me. But yeah, like, he gave me a haven, and I always felt like I owed him for that. And for a whole bunch of other things, because I always felt he was always there. So when it came to coming up with the studio, like, I didn't even think about it. I was like, of course, you helped me achieve my dreams, I'm gonna help you achieve yours. And it was after we had the studio and going forward from there, that's when things started going bad. And I started seeing a side of him that I guess I always knew was there, but didn't really realize until we really got into it and really worked with each other. And I could see that side of him, which was incredibly unhealthy. And basically, the reason why I left that band and that company was because, number one, it was fast becoming obvious to me from a business standpoint that it was financially unviable. You know, after a year and a half, almost 2 years, purely from a business standpoint, this wasn't going to work. The way it was as a business model, it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to make money. Number two, I was exhausted, completely and utterly exhausted, because regardless of what he might say, I was doing, I can say with full honesty, like 80-90% of all the grunt work. I was the audio engineer, the producer. I was recording, mixing, mastering anyone's tracks, whoever came in. I was doing all the paperwork because for some reason this guy couldn't understand Microsoft Office. I was doing all the graphic design, from everything from the website to flyers for the thing, for the studio, flyers for the shows, all of that. I designed the album covers. I designed our logo. I designed our label logo. I designed everything. I spent so many nights just sleeping in this soundproof room with no windows, so I wouldn't know if it was day or night. I remember once I woke up from the floor and there was a cockroach right next to me. It was disgusting. At the same time, also, whilst all that was happening, it wasn't a good environment either. Like, as we were getting more and more known and getting more recognition. Because the other thing was, when we started up, a lot of people in the music scene, for some reason, fucking hated us. And I always attributed it to, you know, like, we didn't kiss the ring of those that we were supposed to kiss the ring of, or whatever the fuck. People weren't giving us gigs, so we organized our own, and apparently that was a faux pas. So yeah, there was a lot of crap coming at us from within the local music scene. And as we started getting bigger, I thought it would calm him down, but instead, I knew that shit pissed him off, but instead of calming him down and making him feel validated, you know, he just felt validated to be more of a dick. And it was an uncomfortable situation, you know, it just was. It wasn't fun. That combined with how tired I was, doing all this shit, recording really shitty bands sometimes. It was tough. And just being in an environment with the guy was tough the bigger we got. But the main reason why I left that all behind me was because I discovered that he was using those feelings I had for him, those feelings of me that I owed him, that those feelings of friendship. He was using that and basically told me a flat out lie, the purposes of which was purely so that I would never leave his side and never leave the company and always feel worried for him. I won't go into the details that much about it, but that's in a nutshell what he did. Like, maybe it doesn't sound like much, but I remember at the time feeling so taken advantage of, because every bone in my body was saying, this isn't working. I need out. At the same time that all of this was happening, my filmmaking career was beginning. And he was even making me feel guilty about that, like I wasn't paying attention to our business. But yeah, there's no other way I can say it except that he took advantage of my trust, my friendship. And I know that he's told anyone that'll listen how it was my fault, how I was the one that fucked him over, how I was the one that left him in the lurch. Well, if I went into the details of how I was fucked over, I think you'd agree that it was not a case of my word against his. Like, he basically told me a flat-faced lie so that I would think that if I wasn't there with him, with this company, he would be in serious danger. And I had to find out from, of all people, my father, that wasn't the case. Because my father knows his father, so he knew the truth. That might be giving a bit too much away, but fuck it. So yeah, like, when I found out what that lie was, and how I'd been manipulated, how all this time I'd been putting every instinct in my body to the side for the sake of my friend because I thought something bad was going to happen to him, when in truth he was using that to make sure that I'd always be there for him. That one really broke my heart in a big bad way, because it was like every ounce of belief in our friendship that I had, every bit of faith and trust that I had was shattered. And I'll be honest, like, because of how long that friendship had been, I was on the line as to whether or not to do anything until he crossed the line and started calling my girlfriend at the time, harassing her with this shit because I wasn't picking up his calls. I just needed some time to myself. Then he started trying to call my girlfriend and sell her on this bullshit lie, and that's when I said enough is enough. And I still remember the time when I was telling him that I wanted out. And that's literally all I got out of my mouth, that I wanted to leave. And he spent the next 45 minutes just berating me and giving me shit. And just listening to him, it really made me realize that he was a compulsive liar. Because he really believed his own bullshit. He was telling me lies that he had told me were lies. Like, he was flat out telling me bullshit that I knew was bullshit because he had told me it was bullshit so that I'd go along with it when he told other people. He was telling it to me like it was true. I just kept quiet and listened, because by that point I was like, I already know. I know what the truth is. It would be pretty impossible for you to make me believe otherwise. Like I remember, like I went to the studio before he arrived so I could get some of my more personal things out, but I didn't manage to get everything. And after that, I thought, after I left the studio, I thought, okay, I'll let him cool down for a bit. I'll come back at night to get the rest of my stuff. He had already changed the locks. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's still there. Some of it's not even mine. Some drumming equipment that belongs to members of Rolling Sixes. I don't even know if they ever got it back. My PC with hard drives with all the original demos of that band, all the photos, all the videos. So I actually don't have a lot of media from that time. As you can tell, I archive a lot of my stuff. That's a period in time that I don't think I'll ever get back. Those archives are all with him, and I bet he doesn't even know how to use them. So I left, and I didn't really talk to many people about it. And for our mutual friends, it put them in an uncomfortable position because they're hearing all this stuff from him. And then with me, I'm just kind of being quiet and saying, look, I had my reasons. Yeah, I never really talked about it. I really tried to distance myself from that era and that time. But one thing I can't get away from is the effect that it had on me. Like, just the direct effect after all that happened. It completely destroyed my sense of trust to anyone. Even my own girlfriend, and relationships after that. The two relationships and the relationship with my girlfriend at the time, I'm sure were all fucked up because I couldn't get over my own shit about what happened. That's not me blaming him, that's me blaming me because I didn't confront it or deal with it. It took me a very long time to trust anyone. I mean, anyone. Because to me, that guy was my brother. And I couldn't believe that he could use me like that. Like I couldn't comprehend it or deal with it. And so I just didn't trust anyone. I couldn't. In fact, now I think about it, I was actively self-sabotaging myself so that I couldn't get that close to anyone like that. Because what was the point? If someone that I felt so close to could treat me like that, what about everyone else? It really fucked up my sense of trust for a long time. And not only that, but it made me want to take a back seat when it came to music. Because I was still in Rolling Sixes at that time. And so that was the band left, and we kept going. And those boys took care of me. They knew how bad that shit hit, and they looked out for me. But at the same time, I started that band. But I didn't want to take the lead after that. I didn't want to take any responsibility for the band. I just wanted to play the guitar. You want to play those gigs? Cool. You want to go in this direction? Cool. There's only things that I found really egregious that maybe I'd voice out. But apart from that, I was just along for the ride because I didn't want to take that role. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, maybe that's why the band eventually fell apart. Because I didn't take responsibility for it. And I bring this all up these days because I realize, like, not only did it affect my sense of trust and friendship and my feelings towards other people. But it's weird, but I'm realizing now how much it affected my relationship with playing music. It's strange because at that period, I gave no fucks as to whether or not people liked or disliked what we were doing, what we were playing. I just enjoyed playing music. And I'd come up with these crazy ideas and all this stuff and just do them because they were fun. But like I said, like after that, I took a back seat, you know? Like with Sixes, you know, they can take it in that direction and I'll just go with it. I just wanted to play, you know? At least I was getting the satisfaction of playing music. But what I realized is that experience has put me in a situation, has made me hold back from just doing shit with music. You know, like I felt safe with Rolling Sixes because it was a completely different genre. So we wouldn't be in the same circles of people, we wouldn't be in the same shows, we wouldn't be in the same venues. And I look at how my thought approach is to music now, and it's number one, I'm scared and worried because I don't think I'm that good. And it's the wonderful thing about social media, like it can make you feel really shit at anything very quickly by going, oh, only that many people liked or saw or heard this. I must suck. But it's also that not giving a fuckness about whether or not people care and going all out. I realized how much those events affected that ability in me because I kind of related to that. You know, as I've been setting up guitar amps and drum kits and plugins for my recording software and all this stuff, I can also see how in my head I'm holding myself back a bit and, you know, to the point of thinking about how can I do this stuff and not sound like that era, or how can I do this stuff and still not bump into this guy. Because to this day, the thought of bumping into him puts chills down my spine. Just trying to record this episode and talk about all this, I was genuinely scared and nervous and anxious, and I'm really realizing how much those events have still affected me because I thought I was over it, and I guess I'm not. I still find myself every once in a while checking out Y2K's YouTube channel to see, like, are they doing anything new? And every time it's either upsetting, infuriating, or disappointing. Because these fucking masks, that was the whole point of these masks. We were always replaceable. The band is the band, you know? And as much as I'd left it and said goodbye to it, I also knew that there was something there that could become huge. And I look at it now and it's embarrassing. Other times I look, you know, I see it and it infuriates me because, like recently, I checked out the YouTube page to see what other stuff have they got. And I think in 2016, there's Boo, he re-recorded one of the songs that I wrote, which was already like, what the fuck? Re-record one of your own songs that you wrote. Re-recorded one of the songs that I wrote and completely missed the point of it. And it was such a terrible version of it. I was just like, what the fuck is this? That band had so much potential and it just looks like it's nothing now. And yeah, like I said, like, I still have a very strong fear of ever bumping into the guy. Because from what I remember, this was a guy that it always felt like he was just one bad day away from just beating someone up mercilessly. Physically, he's a big, tough guy. And the amount of times I'd hear him talk about how he wanted to fuck someone up, or how he bought a new taser. All kinds of shit. Like, to me, he was a violent man. I heard he started doing stand-up comedy, and because of that, I've never been to Crack House Comedy Club because I knew he was performing there. I've always wanted to do an open mic there and just try out stand-up comedy again, but the second I heard that he was doing comedy, I was like, nope, I don't want to see him. And I catch myself every couple of months just imagining what I would say if I bumped into him again. Or what if I did stand up and he started heckling me? Because I still remember, like, the year after I left Y2K, I entered the Global Battle of the Bands again with Rolling Sixes. And he sat in the front row, right in front of me, and I know it was purposely to distract me. And I'm pretty sure he thought that was funny. And I'll be honest, in truth, I'm still scared of the guy because I think he's a wild card. I still remember his violent streak. Freaks me out. I don't want to deal with it. Or the flip side of it is, what would I do with all these emotions and feelings that have been built up inside me? How would I react if I saw him again? And I've really come to realize just how much I've tried to distance myself from that era, distance myself from that past. How much I've tried to erase that time in my life from my memory. Because being in Y2K and having that record label was a huge, huge part of my identity. And after I left it, I really felt the need to reinvent myself. I didn't want to be related to it anymore. And it put a mean streak in me, a very harsh, mean streak that took me a while to get rid of. I don't know. Maybe these feelings have nothing to do with those events, but the truth of the matter is, I've never talked about this stuff. And I don't know how much of what I've talked about is going to be in this episode because I've been recording for over 40 minutes. As much as being in Y2K was a sore point in my life, it was also a highlight in my life. And I guess that's why it bugs me even more that it's hard to look back on the good times of that era because it's soured by that experience with that person. And years would go by where I don't even think about the dude or hear his name or Y2K or anything to do with that part of my life. And somehow, KL's a small place. Something will pop up. But I'm also fucking sick of hiding. I am sick of making decisions based on that past. You know what I mean? Like, it pisses me off that I haven't been to Crack House Comedy Club because of that one fucking reason. Can you imagine that? That's fucking ridiculous. It's really made me realize how there's still a lot of decisions that are made based on that past. And there's still a lot of feelings that haven't been confronted about that past. At the end of the day, I would like to get to a point where I can look at the good times of that era. Because there were good times. Just objectively speaking, there must have been. I loved playing in the band. I loved some of the shows we played. I loved the experience of recording it. And I guess the reason why it's so hard to look at those times positively is because there's that thought in the back of my head of how all those good times are tied to good times with that person who I thought was my friend, who I thought was my brother, which I know is not the case. It makes it's fucked up that I'm realizing 12, 13 years later that I haven't moved on from it as much as I thought I did. And I honestly don't know if putting all this stuff out there makes it better. I don't know if I'll be better after this. I'll be honest, like, a part of me is super worried that he sees this video, gets into a rage and takes it upon himself to kill me. Like, as illogical and irrational as that may sound. Isn't that fucked up? I remember a friend of mine telling me how he spoke to him a while back, quite a few years back. And apparently he said he doesn't know whether he could forgive me. Honestly, I don't know if I could ever forgive him. But I'd really like to move on. That's it for today.